versus if it wasn't, but now they're tubes ears anymore. They said they're gonna put the tubes in there and see if that is the cause for, this is what I speak of.
It is time, yes. So we're going to kick it off for the evening. First of all, I'd like to welcome you here. Appreciate your being here. My name is Dennis Sanford. I'm the illustrious president of this organization, and I will accept your condolences at any time. First of all, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would join me, flags in the corner, and we will begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our treasurer is not here this evening, but and that's Evan Stitt, but our financial condition hasn't changed much from last month. Still very solid, which we're glad for. But we're always looking for donations and, you know, a little extra help. So, let's see, I want to say, where's Nancy? She left.
I'm here.
There she is. We always want to say thank you to Nancy Roy and her crew, because they do such an outstanding job. Well, that's okay. It's the person that's in charge always gets the credit. So. But thank you very much, Nancy. And you know, when we show up, it's always set up. It's always good. It's always a very pleasant evening. A couple of things I want to share with you. You all know, hopefully, that we are promoting our second round of bricks, and the bricks are going to be out in front, similar to the other brick walkway, but it will extend the current brick walkway, as you know, is over here. The other one is going to extend that way. So if you want to honor someone, please don't hesitate to buy your brick. We're going to be turning off sales here sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So don't be left behind. We had a lot of people that came to us after we closed off sales for this side saying, I wish. Well, you don't have to wish if you do it quick enough. So get your order in so that we can get everything processed. $75 a piece for members, $100 a piece for non-members, and there's an unlimited number that you can buy. Okay? We're not going to limit you. If you want to buy 10 or 12, that's great. Second thing that I want to mention to you is that we are having our annual auction this year on November 13th. Frank Seiler is the chairperson for that event. Obviously, it's going to be here. If you have items that you would like to donate for not only the silent auction, but also the live auction, drop them off anytime, Friday or Saturday, from 1 to 4. Okay? Just drop them off. And as I said last time, I'll keep saying it, please don't use this as an excuse to not go to the dump. Okay? We want valuable items, we want things that can be sold, because it is a major fundraiser for the society and the museum. So anything that you're kind of cleaning out of your closets and cleaning out of your attics and your garages, give it a thought, because we'd love to have it. So. And the last item I'll mention to you, and I asked last month, and I'll ask it again, if you had the opportunity to go to Breckenridge, Colorado for 7 days, 6 nights, with airfare for 2, would you be willing to pay $100 for that?
Yes.
If the answer is yes, we are having a drawing, $100 per ticket, and there are only going to be 50 tickets sold. So your chances of winning are 1 in 50. That's pretty good. The condo townhouse is in Breckenridge. It's a block off of downtown. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, fireplace, overlooks the pool, single-car garage. Airfare from Atlanta to Denver for 2. All you've got to do is rent a car, get on I-70, and head west for an hour and a half, and you'll be in Breckenridge. And I can guarantee you that if you've never been there, if you're a skier, you will go back. If you're not a skier, you'll still go back, because it is absolutely beautiful. Summer is just as great as in the winter. The unit, if you're a skier, the lift is about maybe 1,000 feet away. At the end of the day, you can ski right down to the front door. If you're not a skier, there's some great fishing. There's super golf. If you like to hike, there's all the 14ers around. If you want to be in the part of the 14er club, you can do that. There's horseback riding. There's all kinds of stuff in the summertime. And again, it's beautiful. Just absolutely gorgeous. So again, don't delay, because when we sell 50 tickets, it's going to be gone.
Can we buy one tonight?
You can buy all you want tonight.
How many have you sold so far?
We have sold approximately 10 at this point, and we've only had it out about 3 weeks. So the drawing will be the evening of the auction, so there's still roughly 2.5 months, and I can assure you that if you wait until November 13th, you will be out of luck, because I know they're going to be sold out, okay? So don't delay. And we do take cash, credit, PayPal, credit card, chickens, okay, so that's that. Let's see. The last item that I've got is we're going to be participating, as the society is going to be participating in the Sonoy Car Show, which is September 25th on a Saturday. And we have been fortunate enough to receive a donation in the form of product from Milo Tea. And they have said to us, we'll give you all the product that you want. You can then turn around and sell it. So we said, great. So we're going to have a table on Main Street to sell Milo Tea. Sweet tea, regular tea, lemonade, whatever else they sell. Whatever else
You
they
say Milo Tea,
No, Milo.
because it's a car show.
Oh, yeah. It's Milo Tea. So at any rate, what we're looking for is we're looking for a couple of volunteers to help us person that table during the day. The car show goes from 10 in the morning until 4, well, the show goes until 5, but we're looking to have some volunteers that will, as I say, person the table from roughly 10 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can do an hour shift, a 2-hour shift, or you can do it all day if you want. The table will be under a pop-up canopy. There will be love chairs for you and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be on Main Street in the Greenbelt area between the 2 lanes. We're not sure of the exact location yet, but that'll probably fluctuate. But we think it's going to be somewhere around Table Talk or Kalu's, Lisa's Creamery, kind of in that stretch somewhere. So if you're willing and interested, we would certainly appreciate the assistance. We've got a sign-up sheet here. Just jot your name down and do it. It's a great way to meet people. If you want to meet some friends and meet some people, great way to meet people. Plus, you'd be helping the society, and we hopefully it'll be a good fundraiser for us as well. So. With that, those are all the things that I've got to kind of bring you up to date on. Are there any questions that you might have of myself or the board as it relates to the society? All right. Maureen, I'm sure you all know Maureen Schuyler. She's the director of the museum, and she's going to kind of share some thoughts with you as well.
Thank you. Everyone knows that we're always doing something here at the museum. We just got done doing a little quilting class with Claudia Wood taking charge of that. The next thing that we're going to be working on seriously is we partner with the DDA for the Christmas tour every year where the refreshments stop in this room, but we also decorate the museum. And this year we have a theme of a literary Christmas. So we're going to be doing charming little vignettes throughout the museum that feature a book and a little vignette of that book. So if you have an interest in wanting to design a little area for the museum, I'm going to pass around a sheet here if you want to sign up for it. We'll be having a meeting shortly in the next week or 2. We'll have a meeting. There's like the night before Christmas. There's the Christmas box, there's the Gift of the Magi, there's all kinds of books that you can make a little vignette about. So if you think you're interested, or you would like to even just come to the meeting and get a little more information, just put your name on there. And after your name, just dot down there whether an afternoon or an evening meeting is better for you, so that I can judge that way.
Do you have another pen?
Another pen? In the hallway.
Okay.
That's it. Anybody have any other questions about the museum? We're good to go? All right. Beth?
Right. Very good. Now, we get to the real reason that you're here. Before we get to our speaker, I just want to say and thank Beth Young. Beth has been a program chairperson for the last year, and she has always put together an outstanding program for us, and she has not failed us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth as soon as she finishes signing up for the Christmas deal, and the lemonade stand, and
I'll finish that.
so, all right, here's Beth.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. We all have prompts tonight, apparently. Before I introduce our speaker tonight, I just have a little bit of business to cover. This is my favorite time of the year. I mean, first it's football, then fall festivals, and pumpkins, and cornucopia, and Christmas lights, and then champagne glasses. Yeah, it goes that fast. That's how fast. So it's kind of like that downhill roller coaster, and you're at the end of the year. So this will be my last year as program coordinator. When we reach the end, and it's been 3 years, and it just seems like it's gone by really fast, but it's time for me to pass the torch along to somebody else. And so I wanted to make that pitch this evening and let you know the position will be open. It does not take any kind of particular skill set to achieve, I promise. All you got to do is be able to send and receive emails, and you're good to go. There are a lot of people, I mean, I suppose the face that people associate with programs, but there are a lot of folks who are part of the team that make them happen. So I just wanted to do a quick rundown of those folks and just make sure that you understand all the people who get involved to pull this off every month. Obviously, I have to start with Maureen. She's a huge cheerleader and a big supporter, and she creates all of the promotional flyers for really every event that the museum has to offer. So she does that. Jim comes and faithfully sets up the chairs every month, so we've got a place to sit. We've got, if you got an email, then you got that from our secretary, Carrie, and Susan Zeidler before that, so that's how you found out. If you found out about it from our social media, then you got that from Vicki Sewell or Genevieve Mitchell. If you got a newsletter, that came from Susan Stitt. So there are a lot of folks who have a great deal to do to pull this off every month. So you will not be alone. There's a support network there to help you. And just because I get up and I say a few words every month before the speaker begins, that doesn't mean that that's the way you have to do it. So if public speaking is not your thing, that's totally fine. Just, we'll have someone else take care of that if you prefer, but I just don't want that to limit you in deciding whether or not to give this a shot. So please get with me or Maureen anytime, and we can kind of take you through the nuts and bolts of it, but it's really not hard, so I promise. All right, so that's that. I first met our guest tonight, Angela, in the spring of 2019. This was at our tea that the Historical Society had at the Veranda Inn. And Angela was not only a participant, but she was there as a speaker to share about how her love of tea has influenced her writing. In fact, cue the prop, her first book was called Dainty Dining. And so this really sort of celebrates and highlights all of those beautiful tea rooms in department stores across the country. And back then, shopping was an event. You put on your best dress and your hat, and you went and shopped, and then you got to have afternoon tea at the tea room. A far cry from me in my sweatpants in the living room on Amazon. Times have changed. But anyway, sometimes you just meet someone and you know, hey, that's my kind of people. So Angela's love of history and her love for tea and all the accoutrements that go with that, vintage jewelry, I just knew that this was somebody that I wanted to get to know. So I've been really excited for this event tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about her and her history. She began her writing career as a journalist at the Noonan Times-Herald. Part of that was on the police beat, which did come in handy when you decide you want to be a mystery writer. She went on to edit the Noonan Coweta magazine. And then she and her husband, Alex, started their own business in 2013 as freelance writers and editors. And then Angela was chosen as Ellis Crook's editor for his book, Sonoy Boy, which is available at the museum any Friday or Saturday. She has written 5 books now, we can say, starting with Dainty Dining and going to Emeralds and Envy, which you may have noticed there is a lot of green in the room tonight and green on the table. We're sort of highlighting that particular book, but we're going to hear some more tonight about the follow-up book, Rubies and Revenge, which does sort of have some specific nods to Sonoy, so that's really exciting. Anyway, I just ask you to put your hands together for a very warm welcome for Angela McRae. Oh, I forgot to say, she's a brand new member!
That was exciting. I was talking to her earlier, and I said, now that I can prove that my great-grandmother was born in Sonoy, I said, I don't live here. Could I be a member? And she was like, bring me the form. That was exciting. So I've always felt very welcomed by Sonoy. When I came to work in Noonan in 1986, I know it was the first week, I believe it may have been the first night, one of my jobs was covering the city council meeting in Sonoy, which was very interesting. I was not quite prepared for the mayor to point his finger in my face and say, now little girl, nobody told me that would happen. But what I did know is people would come up to me and say, oh, he's just like that, don't be afraid of him. And the city clerk was Elaine Hayes, who was lovely to me, and I met so many wonderful people. And when I think back to those early Sonoyans that I got to know, I'm sorry, but I feel like I knew the cream of the crop with Paul and Totsie McKnight and Joanne, and some of them are still around, like Nancy Roy, who I've just considered a lifelong friend from the moment I met her, I think. But because I was welcomed to Sonoy in such an unusual way, it stuck with me, and I've always felt very blessed to be here, and it ended up being for a sort of an interesting reason, I think, that I felt so welcome. And so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to do the little clicker thing they gave me here. Y'all are way more tech savvy here than I would have expected. I don't think I've been offered one of these before, so this is delightful. But this is the grandmother that I did not know until adulthood was actually born in Sonoy. And her name was Edna Pauline Ogletree Cantrell. And a couple of things. One, I've never known very many Paulines in life, but my friend Cynthia Bennett has a sister named Pauline. There was a lady, a businesswoman in Noonan named Pauline Harris, I believe. I don't know if any of you remember her from years ago. But anyway, Grandmother Cantrell got sick and passed away when she was 94, 95. It was in 1988, and I was working at the Times-Herald. And my colleague Winston Skinner said, Angela, we need to run an obituary in the Times-Herald about your grandmother. And I said, no, I'm not from here, and she's not from here, and nobody cares. We don't want to, wear people out with this. And he said, no, we need to do it. And I said, no, I'm just not interested in that because there's just no point. And he said, okay. And if any of y'all know Winston, he's not one who's going to, yeah, you hear the chuckle, he's not going to let that kind of thing slide. So he came in a while later. I think this was the era of faxes. And he hands me the piece of paper and politely lets me know he's not only already called the funeral home and gotten the obituary, he very smugly says, your grandmother was born in Sonoy. And I was like, what? It was definitely a knock me over with a feather moment because my mother's family was all in the Marietta area. I was born in Austell, well, actually I was born in Atlanta, but lived in Austell till I was 8, so that was our neck of the woods. So I was just delighted to find out that I ended up in the same area where my great-grandmother was born. It's one of those little moments in life that you think maybe this was supposed to be, And then I ended up meeting my husband in the newsroom. A lot of us met our spouse in the newsroom. A girlfriend of mine said, did y'all guys ever look outside the newsroom for And I said, no, actually we didn't back then, but it's worked out well for us. So anyway, that's my little claim to fame as far as Sonoy history is my grandmother Cantrell. And so I'm very happy to have made that discovery, even though I'm a little embarrassed at how I discovered it. Now, as she said earlier, Beth was so nice to say those sweet things about my book, but Dainty Dine 2011, I had the great pleasure of working on Noon and Career magazine with my friend Deborah Williams, the art director, who I learned was one of the most talented and humble people I've ever known. You know how some people brag about their stuff, but they're not really smart? And then you've got the other people who are brilliant, but you never know it because they don't let you know. She's that kind. She's just brilliant. She would quietly reveal over time, oh yes, one day when I was in France working on a book, and I'm like, what? You know, because I would have been blasting that to the world, but she didn't. So anyway, I told her I had an idea of doing a little tea book, and Deborah let me know that if I wanted to, she would love to design it. And how many people get that opportunity in life? I said, sure. So I knew, because I had sort of this nerdy interest in history and tea rooms, that this is what I wanted to write about. And I had no plan ever to approach a traditional publisher, because this was such a niche idea for a book. It was going to have old recipes, it was going to feature old postcards, and it was going to have pictures of my junk. You know, teacups and old menus, and I thought, how would I sell any? I don't even know what I'm doing, but I knew how I wanted it done. And Deborah told me, yes, we'll make it happen. So that was just delightful. And I thought I would share quickly two of my favorite stories in that book. One, has anybody ever been to Marshall Field and Company in Chicago back in the day? Really, I actually had the pleasure, it's a Macy's now, like everything is a Macy's, but I had the pleasure of shopping there once. I had a good friend, Susan West. Some of you may know her. She works at Piedmont here in Newnan, or there in Newnan. She wanted us to go be on Oprah. Not be on Oprah, but in the audience for the Oprah show. There was some supermodel there that day, naturally. You know, you're hoping for George Clooney, but you didn't. Anyway, so after we got through doing the Oprah thing, we went to Marshall Field. And I remember thinking, wow, this is neat. Stores used to look like this. That's just amazing to me, because pretty much the grand old department stores were dying out by the time I came along. So I really enjoyed researching these places. And so I started looking online, places like eBay and Etsy, for all these old postcards. And I found out that at one time Marshall Field had 6 tea rooms, and this was their Narcissus tea room. And so one of my ideas was, I wonder if I can redo some of these old recipes and make them. Now, one thing I have to say that makes Marshall Field sort of the preeminent old department store in my mind is that he is famous for saying, give the lady what she wants. That was his credo. One day he came by and a sales clerk was arguing with a customer, and she said, well, there's a problem. This lady wants da da da. Marshall didn't want to hear it. He said, give the lady what she wants. And I personally think every store ought to operate. I hear y'all laughing. I'm serious. How many of you get that kind of service today, everywhere? Do you get it much of anywhere outside of small places where I might get that from Nancy Roy comes to mind. I know I had a tea set from her years ago, and it was so pretty, or was, it still is pretty. I use it with violets in the spring. It's such a cute set. And a few days later, I got in the mail a package of the matching butter pads that she had found. And Nancy said, oh, here, you need these because they go. And I thought, are you kidding me? Who does that? Well, Nancy does that. It's hard to imagine a store today doing that, isn't it? Have y'all ever been to an antique mall where they sent you a gift with purchase? I have not had that happen. So anyway, so that was just really fun. And so obviously tea sets, as Beth had mentioned, is kind of my passion. I love those things. So I like knowing Marshall said, give the lady what she wants. And I really wanted something from the Marshall Field tea room. And so I was browsing, or stalking is more like it, Etsy one day, and found this lovely little Dimitas set. And you may be asking, well, how do you know that came from the Marshall Field tea room? Well, because it says Marshall Field and Company. Isn't that delightful? So I just thought that was wonderful. And I also love that pretty Art Nouveau design. I think those swirls and soft colors are just, that's very much my cup of you-know-what. I really like that. And I'll tell you a fun story, too, about that particular cup. At the time I bought it, there were 2 of those on Etsy. But I thought it was a little pricey. I just needed one and done. Well, later, you get to thinking, I really should have bought that up. How many times have we done that? It's kind of that one that got away. And so a week or 2 later, I'm so enjoying my little cup. What if I have a friend over? She needs one too. Well, I go online, it's sold. Somebody's bought it. Of course they have. Well, that's okay. Life goes on. Years later, I met a fellow tea blogger. I have a little tea blog called Tea with Friends I've been doing for 15 years for high-level tea nerds, I would say. We talk about every tea room we go to, every teacup we purchase is online. You can find out about our lives a lot that way. I met this lovely woman from Michigan. She lives in the Detroit area. Her name's Phyllis Barkey. And we and some other tea bloggers have met up over the years in B&Bs, or we've met in Asheville, Kentucky, different places to just check in with each other. And one day she was talking and said about Marshall Field, and she said, I bought the cutest little Dematage set from the Marshall Field Tea Room. And I was like, where did you buy it? And she said, well, it was on Etsy. So isn't that funny that my friend Phyllis in Michigan, and there were probably, 200 of these, who knows, back in the day. But I think how interesting that I would meet the lady who clearly bought the one that I'm glad Phyllis got it, sort of. Anyway, so that was just a fun detail about that. Now this one you'll have to follow me. This gets a little complicated. The Higby store is popular in pop culture for a number of reasons, but the one that I'll bet you all know. Who has seen the Christmas movie, A Christmas Story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. When Ralphie's looking in that window, what is he looking at?
The drink that?
Rifle.
Right,
BB gun.
Right, the Red Ryder BB gun.
Yeah.
And what is the store where he bought that? Higby, very good. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Okay. Cynthia's not a miss. There's always the teacher. No, but I thought that was delightful that was filmed there. An important store, I know it. It had a tea room, and a movie that I watch every year at Christmas was filmed there at that window. Well, there's also a very popular modern day actress who used to work at Higby, and that would be the actress Halle Berry. Did you know that? Okay, good. At least I've told you one nerdy history thing you did not know. Halle Berry worked there part-time when she was a teenager. But Higby's main competitor, or one of their big competitors in Cleveland, was the Halle Brothers department store. Guess where Halle Berry gets her name? From the Halle Brothers department store. She was named after the store. And yet she worked at the competitor later when she was a teenager. I thought that was kind of cool. And then, to make it even weirder, I thought I've got to include one sports reference for the guys. And I was so glad to see my buddy Scott back here. Because I thought, okay, this will make it worth me trying to tell this story. So y'all bear with me. I don't speak sports really well. But apparently back in 2018, there was this football game. The LA Rams are playing, and I think the quarterback's name was Goff. Goff, does that sound potentially right? Okay. Anyway, Goff is doing this play, and apparently in football you have these codes when you're changing the play, and you say, I guess, some word that is a nonsensical thing. And the guy started hollering, Halle Berry, Halle Berry, Halle Berry. He was, and who happened to be watching that ball game while she was on Twitter, but Halle Berry. And she tweets, Goff, did you just say Halle Berry? What does that mean? Well, it turns out that Goff was indeed calling the play Halle Berry because his coach really admired her and thought she was beautiful, and I do too, by the way. I think she's one of the most beautiful actresses of modern, and she's very classy. I'll make that about her. I like classy people. I aspire to classiness one day. But anyway, so Halle is watching that, and the football player is just thrilled that Halle Berry knows who he is, and he's commented on that. But he's throwing the ball to a player named Tyler Higby. Okay, do y'all find that interesting? I find that interesting. I just think, is that too nerdy? I mean,
Not at all.
these are my people. If I can tell that story anywhere, it will be in Sonora. So there you go. That's the Higby story. And I've got a few other nerdy things to tell you. In the recipes in the book, and not everybody's into cookbooks, so I'll zip through that. That's fine. Higby was known, their restaurant was called the Silver Grill. And one of the things they served, like if you got a Cracker Barrel for breakfast, you'll get that little basket of the biscuits and cornbread. Thank you. Well, they served plain muffins. That was their thing. But one of the variations was cinnamon muffins. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to make, because plain muffins don't really float my boat, but a cinnamon muffin, I'll eat those. So while testing the recipes, I wanted to make the things I thought I would eat, that Alex and I would enjoy, so we did that. And a little butter on there. Is there anything butter doesn't make? Thank you. I thought I'm going to just tempt everybody with a melted butter. But in the book, you saw how pretty and delicate the little Limoges teacup from Marshall Field was. But this, I decided when I was doing these photos, because I took the photos myself, I thought, well, I'm going to just put this on a piece of old restaurant ware. And this was a piece of Syracuse china that I had picked up at I think at a little antique mall in Adairsville. It was like $2 or something, really, really minimal. And I like that fancy little border. It kind of livened it up. But if you know what restaurant ware is, I think of it as like Waffle House dishes or something you get at the Mexican restaurant. Maybe it's thick and sturdy and really designed for hard knocks, that kind of thing. But I thought it was so pretty, and I just really, that pattern impressed itself on me for some reason. I don't know why, because when I started to do the photo, I doubted myself. I thought, you really should put it on some of your china, something with a frilly pink border and some gold and roses. But I thought, no, I really wanted it on that. And so I found that recipe online, made my little thing. Then afterwards, I had found out after I did the recipe that there was actually a whole book about the silver grill itself. And I already had my research done, because a lot of this you could find online without reading the book. I did read a book about every store, but you didn't have to find out most of this information. And so I ordered the book about the silver grill. When it came in, I was so excited. I zipped up in the little package and I took it upstairs where I was walking on the treadmill that afternoon. And as I did, I flipped through, and it happened to mention that they had china particularly made for their tea room from Syracuse, China. And I thought, oh, well, isn't that interesting? And then it said, and the china pattern matched the wallpaper border in the silver grill. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of neat. Wouldn't it be nice if I knew what that looked like? I flipped over a few pages, and I honestly nearly fell off the treadmill because it was that pattern. And I just thought that was just one of those little, it just kind of made me think, this is the project I was supposed to do. I don't know that it's got spectacular worldwide importance or anything, but it was really neat to me. And it was cool to have that happen and to know, I think the Lord just led me to buy that plate because He knew I was going to make cinnamon muffins one day. No, I don't know. That was kind of a weird thing that happened, but I enjoyed it and had a lot of fun doing that. In my second book, by the time, I think this came out in 2016, Alex and I had started our company by then where we were freelancing, and we were also doing PR for some local companies and nonprofits. That's where I'm pretty sure that's where I first met Cynthia and Doug and some other people today through the Community Foundation, Chamber, Can't Never Could, just a lot of groups like that I've gotten to know through the years. And so I was working on the PR side of things. I was also editing books for people, but I really wanted to learn to write fiction. I always like to have the next challenge in life. I think, are you like that? Everybody seems to want a project. You want to learn something new, whether your thing is needlework or history or genealogy or whatever your passion might be. So I decided that for a year, I was going to write a tea-themed short story every Saturday for 52 weeks. And that seemed like a lot, but I did it. And sometimes I was up at midnight on Friday night. I really wished I hadn't done it on Saturdays because that ruined a lot of Friday nights, because I told myself, if I set a deadline, I'm generally going to meet it, come hell or high water, because I just don't like to let people down and, meet expectations. That's so important. So for a year, I did these stories, and to my delight, my blog readers really liked them and began looking forward to them. And at the same time, I discovered this wonderful app. I can't remember whether I first found it on my iPad or my iPhone, because it's on both, but it's called the Waterlog app. Do any of y'all use that or know about it? Oh, it's just delightful. If y'all are at any group, if you're in a nonprofit or the Historical Society might use it, or your church group or whatever, you just take a picture and upload it, and you can run it through all these filters. And I like the one that really looks like watercolor, and that's all I did. It doesn't have, no professional hands touch that, just mine. And I thought that was the coolest thing. So each week I took a picture of some tea doodad I had, and that was my illustration. And so at the end of the year, I had pretty much written 1,000-word stories. So I had 52,000 words, enough for a book. And I just used the stories and the artifacts that inspired me. This one actually had a sweet story. The eggs are in the background on purpose because I don't know if any of you ever shopped at Sydney's Alley, the little store that was on Main Street. Okay, my friend Liz, who owned that, that is a set that her country grandmother up in the mountains saved her egg money to buy. It was very important to her that she could buy these pretty blue ironstone dishes back in the day, and very few of them were left, and Liz said, I want you to have one. Well, that was just so meaningful to me. That's like, I may have a few ritzy pieces of teaware, but you could probably have them before you could have that. Because, I don't know if you have had friends who've given you something that's just so incredibly generous, but I've been very fortunate in that regard. And so anyway, that was the story about the Silverdale dishes that's in the book. And then Put a Lid on It was a fun name I came up with because I won't stop and read it, but there was a sassy story. I had a little sass in me. Some of you already know that. And so I thought I'm going to give some sass to this character in the 40s who's going to be working at a tea room based on the Halley Brothers tea room, because that's a teapot I found on eBay years ago, and on the bottom it really does say Halley Brothers Tea Room. And so I made up a 40s era story where a soldier comes into the tea room for his lunch, because that happened a lot back then. They would be on break or whatever, there was a base nearby. And so it was fun doing all that research. You know, 1,000 words I can knock out like crazy, but research, I can go down the rabbit hole for hours. And I bet many of you can as well. It's so fun to find those little details. So that was a really fun thing to do for a year. And then when I was done, I always had it in mind, I wanted to do a book, but I was very happy that my blog readers, and Cinda, bless her, has been one of them. In fact, I think we first met through my blog. And we didn't meet IRL till many years later. Now we're in the same Sunday school. She sees more of me than she ever needs to. But it was fun to get to know. And she's quite good at dainty dining, by the way, before I ever laid eyes on her, because she ate at the richest tea room when she was a little girl and ate French fries, as I recall, right?
It was my daughter, her first meal that she was still being breastfed. The first meal she ever had was at the Rich's Magnolia Room.
Yes,
She
which I
had
just
French
thought was a
fries and
delightful
a
story.
grilled cheese sandwich.
And she gave me her blessing to include that, so. Oh, what did I, I thought I killed it. So, anyway, okay, so that was my first foray into fiction, was writing sweet little tea stories, but that went well. And then when blog readers said, oh, we hope you're doing a book. Yes, I'm doing a book. I'll do a book on anything just about now, because I love doing books, and the process of it is really fun. Getting finished with them is even more fun. And so the big thing that I had been working on for years was to write a novel, and I wanted to write one based on, I don't know if you, I won't say based on, but similar to the style of Laura Child's Tea Shop Mysteries. If any of you have read those, that's what really got me interested in cozy mysteries, because they're sweet little mysteries. They're sort of like Nancy Drew for grown-ups. You generally bump somebody off stage. There's not a lot of blood and gore, and then the town is full of small town gossip and that kind of thing. And I know my small town gossip. You know, working at the Times Herald for 25 years, I learned plenty of stuff that I was told to don't put it in the newspaper. I didn't. I saved it for the books. So I have kept my word. And I don't use the names, I will say that. But I have disguised things very well, I think. If anybody's naughty, I tend not to base that on a real life person. If they're good, they need to be memorialized forever with a character. But Emeralds and Envy was the first one, and as she said, it came out in 2019. And I've been very fortunate that so many people have responded well to that book. And, you know, your first book is always like a science project to me. You don't know what you don't know. Question?
So I've never asked you,
Oh, okay.
but I'm going to ask now.
Okay.
Why did you choose the Siamese kitty?
Oh, because I just thought the Siamese cats were neat when I knew that some people think they were descended from royalty, and that Vivian Lee had a Siamese cat. And I actually want to explore that a little more in later books, just didn't have room for it in Ruby's. But I just think they're interesting creatures. And but it is interesting to know that I'm allergic to cats. I've never had a cat. So, but it was fun to research, and if I weren't allergic, I think they're pretty. And I also like that and I've always heard, because I read a lot of what my friends with cats share, that they're kind of territorial and prissy, and I see all these jokes about the cat runs the house, and that just appealed to me. I thought it sounds fun. So that's why I thought the Siamese would be fun, because but a big part of it was the history. Once I knew that some people think they were actually regal in another life, I'm like, why not? That would be a good character aspect to explore. So anyway, Emeralds and Envy was the first book, and people ask me often, you know, some of these things are obviously based on places in Enum. Yes, they are. Some people try to disguise it, but if it's something good, I'm happy to give credit where credit's due. And when I was the editor of Manitowoc Magazine, one time we had a feature, in fact, I think my husband wrote this one. It was about Lucille Reynolds of Mother's Kitchen, which is now closed, unfortunately. But I totally did a rip-off of that and named it Mama's Place in my book. And it's really a salute. And I've had several people say, that was based on Mother's, wasn't it? Yes, it was. But it was, have any of you eaten there before it closed? Yes. Don't you think that's a unique place yes, okay. Even when I was working on this book, my editor told me she so enjoyed reading about that, and she said, oh, if only there were really a place like that in the world. And it made me so happy to say, at the time I could say there is.
Yes.
Now I have to say there was, because unfortunately she closed last year, like so many places, but you know, she'd certainly done plenty of good work and fed plenty of good food over the years in Newman. So that was one real world thing that came about. and was exhibited in real-life form in Emeralds and Envy. And then something else that's just a history nerd kind of thing. A friend of mine was getting her PhD at Emory, and a lot of her work had to do with a certain artist, and she kept telling me, you need to read this book called Strapless, and it's about Madam X and John Singer Sargent and the scandal. Do any of you know that story about I knew the dress, and I've seen various versions of it. In one version, she's got 2 straps. In one, she's obviously got only 1 strap, and then another, she's got the strap kind of hanging off. You know how if you've ever worn a tank top or something, sometimes that happens. Well, apparently that was like the most scandalous thing in the world at the time. And there was just, Paris society was in an uproar about it. And so my friend turned me on to that book after I kept putting it off, because I don't know about you all, but I don't generally like to read what people tell me to read. I want to read my own stuff because I tend to get bored if I think it's your book, you know, but if you tell me something and I just pick up on it, or if you tell me I shouldn't read it, then I'm going to go straight through it. You know, I'm that kind of reader. And so I was delighted to discover that the art angle and the history behind all of that was just fascinating to me. Are any of you artists or into art? Oh, good, y'all are my people, because I can't do stick figures. That's why I was thrilled to find a waterlogged app that makes it look like I can do watercolor when all I can do is take a picture and upload it, you know. So that was really a fun thing to make just a little note, but you may recall a scene in Emeralds and Envy where the boyfriend, Justin, is talking to the main character, Emma, and they just casually mention a little blurb about Madam X and the John Singer Sargent painting. And so that was the inspiration for that, because I just thought it was a fun story, and she was, interestingly to me, from New Orleans originally. Her father fought the Civil War for the South. Who knew? And then some people have asked me about the name of the cat. My cat is named Miriam Haskell, just because if I could pick one jewelry designer and you could give me all the Miriam Haskell jewelry in the world, that would be her, because I just thought her pretty, pearly, gaudy, it just appealed to everything girly in me. I just thought it was wonderful. And like so many of these designers, she just has a rich background of coming from an immigrant family and how they made it in this country, how she founded her company with a guy named Frank Hess. So you have Miriam and Frank. And I love getting this book and learning the stories behind the stories about how she created her jewelry, what she did with it. I love knowing who wore it. The Duchess of Windsor, remember her? She wore the jewelry. Lucille Ball was a big fan, and Joan Crawford had, I'm told, almost every piece Miriam Haskell ever made. She was like a super fan of Miriam Haskell's jewelry. So I thought that was pretty neat. Okay, then we're moving on to yet another vintage interest.
I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this was my pandemic project. This is why somebody was telling me earlier, you all had on these pretty green outfits, and they asked where mine was. I said, it's in the closet. I bought a whole green wardrobe that I could wear early in 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and I ate sweets for a whole year and mastered sourdough bread. So now I'm like 15 pounds heavier than I was, so I can't get into any of the green outfits. So I said, next time I'm going to buy floaty dresses for the red books and just keep it safe, just because you know, y'all are laughing. Tell me y'all did not gain a pound. I expect a little honesty. As you know, we are family here. So anyway, pandemic project was the vintage Christmas cookbook. And just to show you some of the weird collections I have, in addition to teacups, I collect Santa mugs. When I worked at the newspaper, my friend Nicole, she and I were walking across the street one day. There was a little antique store called Mitchell's right across from us for, I guess, a couple of years. And they had these cute, cute Santa mugs in the window. And I said, oh, aren't those precious? And Nicole said, you want to collect those? And I, no, I've got all this tea stuff. And so that year for Christmas, what does Nicole give me but 2 Santa Claus mugs? The very first one at the top left and then that one at bottom right were the ones from Nicole. Well, thus began a collection. My mother, my late mother, God bless her, was just a big thrifter, and if you wanted something, mother wanted you to have it. You probably all got mothers or family members like that if you even mention it, they're going to just move heaven and earth to get it for you. Well, mother, on her thrift store jaunts, I would go home to visit her in Tallapoosa, and she would give me 5, 10 Santa mugs. So anyway, and this was only a few years before she passed away, but I now have like 125. I think. Nice little collection. And I do use them. I drink my tea out of my Santa Claus mugs at Christmas. One year, I had a big fake tree, and I used them as ornaments on the tree. So that was kind of fun. Of course, when the tree fell over, that was but I only lost one, I'm happy to say, but it was so pretty. I think y'all would have liked it. So, anyway, that was a way to get historic collectibles into a book. And again, this was when I decided to self-publish because what a weird idea, but yet it seems to have worked. And something else, I looked through eBay, Etsy, antique stores, anywhere I could to find vintage recipes to try. These were from a Michigan keeps coming back into my life for some reason, but Michigan Gas Company collectible booklets were just all over the place. And so this was a page in the book where I made their spice nuts, and in an antique mall in Cobb County, I found these little waxed paper cups. Oh, somebody, I can't remember who, maybe it was Susan, earlier night said they just don't make things like they used to. Okay, we were talking about, don't you ever think that with jewelry and paper goods, things are not the quality they used to be. There's plenty of stuff out there, but you don't see fancy, crimped edge, painted, and those were made in England, which made me love them even more. So it was really fun to find things like that to illustrate this book. And these were some English coasters and paper dollies like you line your plates with when you're doing Christmas cookies. And then the card over on the right, that is a little find I found one day at the carriage house. Nancy always has the best stuff. I try to go there early in November because I want to get the loot there before everybody else does. But I just thought it was so pretty, and I really wanted, I wanted something that emphasized the religious aspect of Christmas. I don't ever want to lose that as a believer. I thought that's important, and how can I even put that? Because I'm showing all these Santa Claus things, and here we go, a Bible. Yes, my team. So I was thrilled to have found that, and I just thought it was so pretty. I love the brightness of the colors, and again, it made it even more special to me knowing that it came from a friend's shop. So that was a sweet thing. And then the next thing I was working on, thank goodness, is about to come out. You all have been patiently waiting. And so I think I've already told some people, and if you're my Facebook friend, you know that the ebook is coming out September 28th, and then hopefully the paperback will be out in the near future, and I will certainly be yelling that from the rooftop when that book date is announced to me. But this was obviously the sequel. It's the same cast of characters, but this book started as a Christmas book. And I thought it would be fun to see what Roseland is like at Christmas, because every town does fun Christmas things, and it's so pretty and all that. And I was going about halfway through, and then I was talking to my publisher one day, and she said, "Oh, you're not writing a Christmas book, are you?" And I said, "Well, yes, I kind of was." And she said, "Well, Christmas books don't sell. People only want to read a Christmas book at Christmas." And I was like, "Oh." Because I thought, I like to write books, but I also like to make money. So I did not want to write a book that just was only going to be interesting to people for those few days. So I thought, well, let me rethink this. And she said, well, you can write about Christmas, just don't make it all about Christmas. Make it part of the plot, but not the entire thing. And I thought, well, that's easy. And so I began thinking, what are the things that I can do to make my book a little more fallish and less Christmassy? Well, that wasn't hard because already it began at a bazaar. The town has this big extravaganza, kind of a craft show. I don't think we've done anything like that in Coweta that I know of on a grand level, but I hear Columbus, I think at their Civic Center, they used to have something like that, maybe still do, where people come buy all these arts and crafts and things in time for the holidays. And so that was part of my inspiration that you'll see in Rubies and Revenge. And I wanted to feature a different jewelry designer each book. The cat doesn't change names, by the way, but the jewelry designer may. And I was fascinated with the story of Hattie Carnegie, because she was this, I think she was like 4'10". She was this midget little woman almost. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Sorry. I don't think we're supposed to say that word anymore. I remember that I need to be more careful.
You were close. You did Little Women, so that's close.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, she was just a worker bee. She came to this country, she and her family, with practically nothing. She was a Macy's messenger girl. She had 3 blouses and 1 skirt to her name. And she created a fashion empire, and this was even in the early 20s and 30s at the peak of her fortune. She had a $10 million business and ran 5 companies. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was astonishing. And then I learned she didn't actually design the jewelry that bears her name. She just licensed her name to be used for it. I love the stories of business women, because I'm like, well, would I let them put my name on something? And I thought, well, it depends on A, what it looked like, and B, how much they paid me for it. If people were popular enough to have an Angela McRae line of jewelry, maybe. I think I'd want to design it, but maybe I'd let them use my name on the little cartouche on the back, And so learning about Hattie was just a lot of fun. And so I decided to insert Hattie into this book. So Hattie is one you'll read about. She's part of the inspiration. And then before I show you this next slide, I have to tell you that, again, I'm thinking about Thanksgiving. What do you think about when you think Thanksgiving? Turkey, there you go, that's the big thing. Well, years ago, when I worked at the Times Herald, Billy Thomason, the owner, told me one time that he had heard a story that years ago, around Christmas time, that is sort of a promotion to get people downtown in Sonora, they threw turkeys off top of the building as a giveaway. And I thought, that's just about the craziest thing. And I also kind of wondered if he was kidding me, because Billy, if any of you know him, has sort of a dry sense of humor, and it's sort of hard to read him, even after I've worked with him all those years. And I thought, I just don't know about that. And so even though I'm writing fiction, it needs to be believable fiction, and it really has to be believable to me first, because I don't think I can make it believable and real to you if I haven't got into it. And then, lo and behold, I had the great pleasure, I guess it was almost 2 summers ago now, I was asked to edit the book for Ellis Crook, and I'm reading along one day. He's writing about Christmas in the 1930s and says, this was the time of year that C.P. Daniel and the owner of Holberg's came up with the idea of giving away tickets on merchandise bought from them and having a big joint drawing for money on Saturday afternoon. They had greased pole climbing, and for prizes, they threw turkeys from the top of buildings. They put on quite a gathering to bring people to town, ring up sales while the money from cotton sales was prevalent. Well, that's all I needed to know. I thought if Billy said it and Ellis said it, I believe it, and that settles it. So, in my book, we have an event called the Turkey Toss, and it's very important to me. Increasingly, I've seen the work of our nonprofits in Cary County. Doug and Cynthia can tell you, boy, have we seen it with, like I said, I do a little work for the Community Foundation, and following the tornado, I feel like Kelly has been just put out heroic efforts in helping people. And of course, there's tons of work to be done, and we seem to have only scratched the surface in some ways. But I knew I wanted nonprofits and giving to be characteristics of my fictional town, because I think that's very representative of Noonan and Sonoy. And so I created a fictional event called the Turkey Toss. And so they're not tossing it off of buildings, they're handing them to people. They're frozen and not, we're not killing turkeys. So I don't want the animal rights people coming after me. So I need to keep that what it should be. So that's just a little, in the cozy mystery world, we call those Easter eggs. Have you ever heard that term before? Okay, good. If you haven't, it's just in cozy world, that's just a little planted, little secret inside scoop thing that will make sense to any reader. You can't have it where it's an inside joke that only 12 people are going to get. It needs to make sense in the context of the story. But to me, that's a little shout out to Sonoy. So if you see the Turkey Toss, if any of you read the book, you'll know where that came from. And so, surprise, confirmation, where did it come? As an editing Sonoy boy, who knew? And I had so much fun working on that book, because he was just a great person to talk to, and really I mostly that was Cheryl, and she knew what she wanted, she knew how to get the answers from her dad, and it was great. And then I got to meet with them one night, had dinner with the family, and just a very enjoyable project, and I'm so glad that he did that, and I learned a lot from this historical society. Okay, now, one last piece of inspiration for Emeralds and Envy, for Rubies and Revenge, all these gemstones are starting to run together, came from my grandmother's, because Emma Madison, my main character, is inspired by her great-grandmother's, but she's 20 years younger than me. So I drew from my grandmother's, and I shared this with my Facebook friends and got really nice responses from people the other night, because I said, in the book, we're going to have a new line of jewelry made from vintage earrings, kind of like, do any of you wear clip earrings like these? Okay, good. A few do. We've talked about it earlier. I said my ears don't have any circulation in them right now, but they're cute. That's what's important to me. So the jewelry line is made of vintage pieces, and I wanted to name it the Ruby and Doris line of jewelry after my 2 grandmothers. That's my dad's mom and my mother's mom. She's the one who would be Edna, the Sonoy person. That's her, one of her younger daughters. And so that was just a lot of fun to give a little nod. And I've got so many, because grandmother Ruby had 11 children, and so I've got like 833 cousins, as you would expect. And I thought, there's so many of us around. I don't want grandmother Ruby, she's been gone for many years now, but I don't want her to be forgotten. And I know we all remember, but I think it's important for those who never met her to know what a lovely lady she was. She was a worker bee, a gardener, a cook. Somebody said later in life, grandmother Ruby went to work for a nursing home cooking food, and I thought, well, that was probably a break after cooking for 11 kids to just do it with nobody pestering you. You know, that probably was just no big shakes to her. So that's another way that history is personal history, but to me it sort of incorporates the era and the name. Do y'all know any people named Ruby? I don't know. I met a neighbor named Ruby a couple of months ago, but and I don't know many. No way. Oh, don't you love the name? And when you say the Ruby, I think of Grandma Ruby and she really was a gem. I mean, I know we all say that, but mine really was. Just tell me. And so, of course, Grandmother Doris, I loved her too. She had kind of a racy history. She was married 3 times. A friend of mine in college said, Ange, nobody's grandmother was married 3 times. Grandmother was. And her second husband called her Diamond Lil because of her fondness for jewelry. So that was something that maybe I inherited a little love from her. And I thought, just for fun, that I would share, when I finish a project, I'll let myself buy a new piece of costume jewelry. And I couldn't decide which one, so I got both. I really wanted the pastel, but I felt like it was important to get the ruby bracelet, and I love baguettes. And these are, you know, like under $20. I'm not saying I spend tons of money on this at all. It's just a little memento, and to me it says, yay, you finished another book. And then people always ask me, what are you working on next? You're going to look at this picture of all these young women with gray hair and think, what on earth does that have to do with anything? Nothing. What's next is that I have been inspired by the fact that I'm gray now. My sister, 2 years ago, challenged me. She's 8 years younger than I am. And Rhonda said, no, I'm just so tired of coloring my hair. I said, gosh, me too. And we were sitting there bemoaning, you know, oh, you know how it is, you go get your hair, if you colored at home like we did, you have to kind of line up your hair cutting appointment with your hair coloring anyway. You just mess up clothes, it's just such an ordeal. And so she said, let's just go gray. I said, okay, we'll do it together. I'd like to point out that only one of us remains gray. One of us has sort of backtracked a little, and I can't figure out who that is, but I'm happy to have gone this route. But what she told me that I had no clue about, my sister being younger is much savvier, excuse me, with social media. She said, go look on Instagram and type in gray. Have y'all heard that word? Mm-hmm. Okay, some of the ladies have. Kind of like ombre. We think of pretty ombre ribbon that's shaded and got those gradations of color. Well, ombre is the word when you've got that gray ombre look. And I definitely had it for a while. I remember I was featured in some article and they came to take a picture of me, and it was brown here and then gray here. And I was trying to think one day, what do I look like? And I saw a squirrel. And it reminded me of those Facebook memes that said, who wore it better? I'm not sure, you know me. That's definitely what I look like, but you gotta have your mind made up and going through it. So I did my gray squirrel thing, but I began to be fascinated that there's this whole movement. I don't know if you're aware of this, ladies, but there is a thing about going gray. And for some, it's very empowering and all that, but I was talking to, I think, Beth earlier explaining, here's my thing. If you want to go gray, good for you. If you want to color your hair, good for you. But I don't want y'all talking about each other, okay? If that makes sense. I don't want the gray people looking down on the color of the hair, and I don't want the coloring the hair people looking down on the gray. So let's all do our own thing. As my friend Liz used to say, you know, watch your own grass. Don't go over and be doing your neighbor's grass. Your gray hair is your grass, okay? And so I was just fascinated with that concept, and learning that it was a thing was just astonishing to me. My mother, if she were still alive, in fact, I might not be gray, because Mother would be horrified. She colored her hair up until the end, you know, before she passed away. And even Daddy, who's perfectly white-haired, looked at my sister and myself a few years ago and said, why are you trying to look old before your time? And I was like, do those green beans not need picking? Daddy's always got something fun to do, and he's in his 80s now and in great health, so I'm very, very grateful for that. But for me, it was I'm tired of coloring it. I don't really care if people don't like my hair. I'm fine with it. And it's a lifestyle choice for me. It has really simplified things. And I do have to tell you, though, when the pandemic hit, I felt very smug. Because everybody else was worried about where the colorist was and when they were going to get the appointment. And I'm over here with my gray hair thinking, I may look like Eunice from Mama's Family, and I am not worried about getting to the stylist. So, somewhere between Eunice and bald. When it's a little shorter, I think I lean more bald. But when it grows out too high, I start looking like Eunice, and that's when I go to get it cut. So McRae inspired me to start writing a second cozy series, which I call the Silver Sisters Mysteries. I can't set all my books in Georgia forever, so I've leaned over into Alabama, and we've got a fictional town there called Redbud. And so these ladies, the main story is not that they're coloring their hair, that's kind of a backstory, but their main story is they have an architectural salvage business called the Rusty Rooster. And I love to go around. This is not really my cup of tea. I've never bought any of this stuff, but I appreciate it. I'm fascinated by it. I don't know if any of you are. I love it. If I came to your home and you had chippy shutters as part of your decor, I would think it was just the coolest thing, because I think there's something to be said about not only appreciating middle age in people, but appreciating middle age in objects. And so that's one thing I love about people with an appreciation for history. We tend not to just throw everything away. The bad thing is we have packed addicts and you all pack rats like I am. You've got way more stuff that, I see Nancy, but I'm glad she does, because I might get to buy it someday. She hangs on to it. But this architectural salvage, I thought, wouldn't it be fun if two sisters in middle life, one of them 8 years older than the other, opened an architectural salvage business together. So I started researching that, and I thought, oh. So I have written that book. I'm now putting the finishing touches on it, editing it. Not sure what I'm going to do with it, but it's nearly done. And I've had so much fun writing this book. But I'm still going to do the junk and jewelry mysteries. In fact, I have 4 different series planned, but I can't write 4 at a time. I think I can write 2 at a time. We'll see. But the salvage thing is their day job.
You can do it. You can do it.
I need an assistant. And then the other thing from a history standpoint, because of my interest in McRae and hair color, I started doing all this weird going down the rabbit hole of who were the famous colored hair ladies in history. And Jean Harlow, I don't know why I didn't think of her to start with, but did you know that she died when she was only 26? And they say kidney failure perhaps brought on by the fact that she used real bleach on her hair. So if you're going to color your hair, that's great, but please don't put real, don't do the Clorox thing. Go with this Clairol or something a little more upscale. So that was fascinating to me, and I thought that will be worked into the story, because I've really definitely based the sisters on my sister and me. She's the sweet one, and so when you read the book, if any of you read the Silver Sisters Mysteries one day, the cranky one, I'm having so much fun writing for her. That just flows off the keyboard, because it's all these things I think but don't say. Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
How when you're in polite society, you smile, and then you go home and you've got one good friend that you can tell your snark to. My snark is coming out in this character, but don't tell anybody. So when it's done, we want to maintain the illusion that I'm a nice, acceptable descendant of Sonoy. So y'all have an interest in this now. And then finally, the one other book I'm interested in is not a mystery at all. Years ago, just 2 or 3 years ago, Alex and I were taking some family to the West Georgia Museum in Tallapoosa, where my dad lives now, and I found out about a building I had never known existed. This Lithia Springs Hotel was, what was it they said? It's funny, I didn't have to look at my notes. It was the biggest building east of the Mississippi, wooden building east of the Mississippi in 1892. It had elevators, it had a bowling alley, Northerners flocked there. It got built only after a train station came. And when I was at the museum, I was astonished to realize they had all these artifacts from that, which now only, I think I've heard that like a little porch of it. Something teeny tiny is all that's left, but they've got a replica of it there, and it is humongous. It is like Collector's Corner on steroids. And I was just fascinated by that. I thought, gosh, what a fun thing. And then my mind started thinking, who were these people? Why did they do it? And then I found out that Hungarian immigrants came to that area and created a vineyard and named it Budapest. And the other day, I drove by and wrote this, the Budapest Cemetery. I had no idea, and this was history that was literally in my backyard when I was growing up. And that's a big question for me. Why did I not know about that? I went to high school in Tallapoosa for 4 years and had no idea. For one thing, if I ever heard the name Lithia Springs, I thought it meant Lithia Springs, Georgia. But they had lithium, which was, a lot of people were coming south to take the waters, apparently. Had y'all heard of the Lithia Springs Hotel? Okay, well, y'all are ahead of me, because I had not, and I think that story deserves the fictional treatment. It remains to be seen if I'm the one to do it, but that's on my radar, because I'm so having fun exploring that. I found online an old ad, you can see there on the middle of the right-hand side, the sketch for these new manufacturing industries in Tallapoosa, Georgia. So, now, before I wind up, I want to leave room for just a few questions if you have any, but I want to see how well everybody was paying attention. I got you nervous, and I have 3 prizes. These are bags of candy. In every book, I give Emma a new candy that she likes, and Cynthia happens to know that Getz caramel creams are my favorite Halloween candy. I was delighted last year to discover she and her husband had an inside track with this company, so I got to try some new flavors, and it was like Christmas to me. I was delighted. So, here's a question for you. Does anybody remember what store was the one that had an owner who said, give the lady what she wants? Okay, who said it first?
Right here, she says.
Was it? Okay. Did you get the first one down? Okay. And if you got crayons or something, I need a waiver. But they really are good. Okay. What was the name of the football team where they were calling out Halle Berry? Halle Berry. Yes, who said that? I knew it was going to be a guy. I thought, no woman cares. Is the stretch? Get ready. Oh, there you go. All right. Excellent. Okay. And for my final one, let's see. What famous Sonoran convinced me that there really had been a turkey toss? I think I heard you say it first. Yes, there you go. Congratulations. And if you didn't win, I'm so sorry, but Dollar Tree has plenty of them. And then I did bring a little bowl. You're welcome to come take a few. And I should also point out, as of this week, I'm a bookmark owner. I feel like, you know that scene in The Jerk where Steve Martin's jumping up and down, the new phone book came? That was me the day bookmarks came. I've never done bookmarks before because I didn't have 2 novels to put on them. You can't just do one side. I'm told that's tacky, you need 2. So please come get a bookmark. So, anybody got a question for me before I sit down and call it a night? Sure.
So how many tea rooms have you been in that you can recall?
Gosh, I actually have a journal for everything, and I think it's like 40 or 50 something maybe. I don't consider that very many. I've got friends who've been to hundreds of them. So.
Any of them out of the States? Or?
Yeah, a lot of fun ones. In fact, I have this thing about milestone birthdays. When I was 40, I was still single, so I went to England by myself and had tea at a different tea room every single day. And then when I was 60, I was not 60, look at me jumping the gun, 50, 50, I went back to England and France and Italy with my husband for a whirlwind 2-week trip, and we went to tea. Not every day, but several times. And Alex is really a good sport about supporting me in that, so that was a lot of fun.
What's your favorite tea room?
Goodness, my favorite tea room. The one that comes immediately to mind, just because it is so grand and elegant, is the Fortnum and Mason department store tea. Cinda knows, she's hoping to brag about that.
No, I knew that's what you were going to say. I could have answered that.
Well, you couldn't.
Yeah.
But it's so lovely, and it's in this beautiful eau de Nil color, that pretty seafoam green sort of, and it's just very charming. And the Queen went there a few years ago, and I thought if it's good enough for Queen Elizabeth, it's certainly good enough for me. But it was just such they also do beautiful pastries. I'm always impressed with presentation, kind of like when I've come to Sonora to your teas. I know that's very important to you guys, because when I've been to some teas that organizations put on, it's pretty standard. It's just a slab of cucumber and, maybe a cookie or whatever. But at Sonora, they have 15 different things, and everything's going to be pretty, and there's going to be an embellishment, and there's going to be a trinket at your, and it's just going to be so lovely. And this tea room does that, so that's why it's my favorite. Sure.
This is not a question, but it's just a comment.
Okay.
When you were talking about Higbee's and Hallie's,
Yes.
that just triggered such memories for me because I grew up in Cleveland.
Oh, you did?
And when you said give the lady what she wants, Higbee's offered to women, probably at various holidays, but at Christmas specifically, because I remember, you could go down, this is what my mother did, you could go down and you could get a room, and you would have a personal shopper. And the grill would bring you food to your, probably tea and whatever else you wanted, to your room. And you would give the personal shopper your list and they would bring you all these, you know, is this the right size? We had a large family and so that really worked great. So I thought that was wonderful with give the woman what she wants.
That's almost like ordering groceries from Walmart.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I guess, because that's got to be, and were you able to shop at both of those stores?
Well, when I was a little girl, you know, in Cleveland.
Or do
at the
you
time.
remember?
Yes, and Higbee's, I remember specifically because they had wooden escalators and very loud and very narrow, so only one person at a time would go on those, it was like the roller coaster, kind of like ga-gung, 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 but they're all wood. And Higbee's and Hallie's was like Macy's and Gimbel's. They always had a big rivalry between them. And at Christmas time, you know, Higbee's would have Santa, but Hallie's would have Mr. Jingling. And there was a little song that went with that. And so as a child, I just remember the rivalries between those department stores. But I remember my mom getting dressed up and going down, you know, the gloves, you know, and the heels.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, and she would just, that's how she did her grocery shop, her Christmas shopping.
And don't you wish that something like that were still available?
Yes.
You know, I often think, and I've been asked, why don't you go write a cozy series set in the tea rooms of yesteryear? And I think I would really enjoy that, but I haven't figured out how I would make that work with a cast. They kind of need to be in one setting. Like I've got my little fictional Roseland. I don't know how that would work if they were plopping from New York to Cleveland to, you know, San Francisco or whatever. But gosh, what memories, you know, so I love that. And somebody over here had a question.
Do you have a favorite tea?
I do, actually. Thank you for asking. You're asking the fun stuff that I really like. It is called Emperor's Bride, and it comes from a place called The Tea Room in Savannah. I don't think the tea room, last I checked, it wasn't operating as a tea room anymore. It used to, but now I think it just sells teas and touristy stuff. Who knows, with the pandemic, I'm not sure who's doing what anymore. But I know the last time I ordered from them, this blend, it's a black tea that's got pineapple, and I love pineapple anything. So that's kind of the predominant, the fruity note with the black tea. And so it just, in fact, when I had bridal tea, they made a point of serving Emperor's Bride, which I thought was fun. So, but I love lots of teas. There's, you know, if you're having a tea party, invite me, because there's just not much that I won't be interested in. So, anybody else? Y'all have a fun group. Oh, sure.
I'm from Syracuse,
No way.
and members of my family work for Syracuse China.
Oh,
So whenever I see one,
that's wonderful.
I wonder if anybody knew.
Gosh, one of these, it's a small world kind of thing. So you see, they're like, you know, restaurant ware royalty, as you know. So, how fun. Well, this has been delightful. Well, okay.
Thank you. See, don't you want to be Angela's friend too? Yeah. I mean, she's the coolest, and now she's a member. She's a part of the family now. I have a couple of quick things. First of all, our October meeting will be held on Thursday, the 14th. Doug Ellis will be our guest speaker that night to talk about the history and the partnership between Sonoy and Southern Mills, which is now Tenkata. But that's going to be really interesting. The partnership with Sonoy has lasted 80 years, but Southern Mills is even older than that. So please make your plans to come on the 14th of October. One thing looking around the room, I guess I'm the only person from Alabama, and Milo's, with an S, is a food group. So if you have anybody from Alabama, have them come. They'll stand in line to get the sweet tea. I mean, it's just super famous in Alabama. So we'll be selling the tea and the lemonade and whatever else at the car show. You were talking about the turkey toss. Did anyone ever watch WKRP in Cincinnati? All right. Oh, the humanity! When they were throwing out live turkeys. Anyway, that's the first thing I thought about. Great show. We have copies. If you don't already have one, we have copies of Emeralds and Envy. And I do need to kind of set the record straight. I thought that the book, the paperback, was going to be released on September the 28th. Sadly, that is not the case, but you can get a bookmark tonight. And then Angela has agreed that when the books are available and the museum gets our group, then she's going to be here either a Friday or Saturday, maybe both, And you can bring your copy, pick it up, and she'll sign it for you. So we'll make sure that happens. I don't know if you said this in the beginning, but when we planned for her to come and speak, this was actually last year is when we kind of started. And we were sure that the book would be available. So I just hate that everything's slower because of the pandemic, so I hate that we don't have it here tonight. But anyway, we'll let you know as soon as it is available. Thank you so much for coming. Dennis, do you have anything else? All right, guys, I appreciate it. There are extra books available.
Thank you.
You go in the Christmas cookbook. She's got those, so it is what you said tonight.
With those your favorite.
Good luck in your surgery.